I've spent a lot of my years really just taking ideas and looking at how you can make what some people feel in that moment impossible possible.
We are done with issue-based approach. We need to be moving towards action-based approach. Because awareness is important, but awareness is not enough to drive change.
But what I've loved about my whole career is wanting to experiment and try things, and at my own time, at my own pace, with things that sometimes don't make sense, a lot of times seems to be breaking the rules of what we're told to do as women in society. You are seen, you are heard, you are extremely visible, and even if you don't feel it, the world needs you and wants you and is championing you.
Hello everybody, this is Shweta and welcome back to another amazing episode of the Climapreneur show. We are back again with another powerful conversation. Our guest today is Kerry Bannigan, the founder of the Conscious Fashion Campaign, the executive director of the Fashion Impact Fund, the executive producer and the founding member of the UN SDG Media Zone, and the president at the board of BVBLIC Foundation. So welcome to the Climapreneur show, Kerry. I'm so excited to have you here today. And yes, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Kerry, we'll talk about your work in a while, but you have come such a long way and your journey is an inspiration. So tell me, Kerry, what were some of the important elements that you feel, led you to where you are today?
Thank you. And it's a very loaded question. I think, like many people that work in the space, we maybe don't take a moment to stop, reflect, or even always take the time or have the time to be present and think about this. And with this question, you make me look at how did I get here? What came about? And it wasn't any set agenda. I didn't go to school specifically for this. What I have found as a woman social entrepreneur, it's been an accumulation of many things that have got me to where I am today, from moving from England to New York City at 21 years old, moving from a countryside in a very small town upbringing to a city that never slept, was offering so much opportunity and that chance to really explore the world all in one place. And so for me, some of my moments I would think about was I founded my first company that was focused on fashion runway show production and store openings. It was extremely B2B focused about how we could raise the profile and support emerging independent fashion designers from around the world at New York and London Fashion Week. That was in my early 20s. My work, when I look back, has always been extremely focused around economic development and how really you can leverage culture, and specifically through fashion and media, to really get the support and the attention, not just around economic development, but also social, environmental, and economic issues. And so with that, I've spent a lot of my years really just taking ideas and looking at how you can make what some people feel in that moment impossible possible, and really embracing the creative space. And I truly believe that so much innovation lies within creative, and with that within creative entrepreneurs. And I'm always amazed specifically by those that work in fashion and media. And so I would just surround myself with these fantastic people that had incredible ideas, and I would understand that my strength lay in collaborations, connecting, and really building a bridge between private and public partnerships. And for me as an entrepreneur, I had, and I still have to have this discussion with myself today, 17 years on, is yes, I could go and get a job and probably do extremely well in a corporate structure. But what I've loved about my whole career is wanting to experiment and try things. And at my own time, at my own pace, with things that sometimes don't make sense, a lot of times seems to be breaking the rules of what we're told to do as women in society. And so a lot of my journey has also been, I think, really jumping off of that cliff with a lot of risk, with around an idea and hoping that my wings will save me.
Kerry, what amazes you the most about where you are today? Because I'll give you some context. When the first time I landed in London, so at that point of time I could not believe that I have actually reached London, because for me reaching London to pursue masters in climate change like was a dream. Like, there were a lot of hardships and struggles that we as a family together faced for that moment. And I was like, did I really do this? Did it happen? I had a lot of sleepless nights. So, when where you are today, what element of your journey amazes you the most? Do you say to yourself often, see, we made it, we did it?
Yeah, and I love hearing that story. And, almost similar to what you talk about landing in London. When I landed in New York after completing university in England, I had been visiting very often from 16 years old. But at 21 years old, I landed upon graduation. And I was just like, okay, here we go. All these dreams, these ideas, this is the place. I'm having a completely fresh start. But with that, I was also very aware, other than a couple of family members, I was very alone in what I was going to pursue. But now I still do this. The Empire State Building, close to midnight, is somewhat of my moment where I will take myself, and I call it my moment of Manhattan at midnight. And I feel like I have Manhattan a bit more to myself. And I stand and I either walk around the city and I'm just like, wow, 17 years on, look what we're doing. We've got billboards in Times Square. We've got partnerships with the United Nations. We've got things that have gone on for years with New York Fashion Week. And it's so iconic. And when you look at these things in New York, and so I either go up to the Empire State Building and look out over the city. And I used to do it when I would get homesick to remind myself of the city, the vibrancy, the view, how many people there were there, and that where I had come from as a small town girl in an extremely industrial working class town, to what I've also got ahead of me. And so that's a big moment for me. And I think when I walk around New York, no matter where I go on my global travels, New York for me will always remain special. And it just, even just walking around, the smell of the garbage, people rushing around on their phones. It's like everything my family went through, relationships that were sacrificed in my personal life, things I had to miss because I was going through visas and couldn't get back for weddings and births and christenings. And it all accumulates when I stop and I stand. I could stand in any street for a moment in New York and just, I feel the energy, and it reminds me that the sacrifices were worth where I've got to today.
It must be such a delightful and that meaningful feeling, because I feel the same way for London. Like, London is a city that just that's there in my heart. So Kerry, like as you told, like when you were like when you're in New York, like all these things come to your mind. So like what were, like, share with me some of the moments which were difficult like back then, but now those moments have really shaped you to be who you are today. When those moments were like happening to you, it seemed like what to do, why is it happening? So what were the difficult moments in the past?
I think there's been a few there that we could touch on. And I think definitely when I got to New York and I was very bright eyed and naive out of university, thinking, right, that's it, now what? And I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur. But when you land and you're looking at getting a visa and showing stability and security, it was, to me, that I felt it was like a threat on my soul of having to go and work for a corporate but I knew the bigger play was to ensure my future in the USA. And so I went and got a job handling marketing and business development. It lasted only a couple of months because I was starting my own business on the side already, because I really felt that there was a gap for independent fashion designers to showcase and be supported at that time, and specifically sustainable fashion designers. Back then, we're looking at words like eco, ethical, made in, things like that, but to the premise of what people talk around sustainability and conscious fashion today. And for me, I had, I suppose, what we now term today that imposter syndrome of, well, who am I to do this? I come from a working class town, first person to go to university at that time in my family. I'm now here. Yes, I've got the support of my family in the US, but what? When you look at the education levels of people in America, all the experiences that they have on their resume that they achieve through school, which is extremely different to the environment and the school agenda in the UK, the drive, the connections. I arrived and I only knew my father and my stepmom. And so it was wonderful in a personal arena, but professionally, I had no idea how I was going to grow my idea and get it out there. I had never networked. I didn't even know the premise of going out there and meeting people and talking about your goals and seeing how they could support. I just had not had that even input. Even in college, that wasn't even shown to me, and I'm sure it's very different now, and if it's not, I hope it is or should be. But for me, it was really, how do I start? What does this look like? And for being in events and quite a rather social career, I'm quite an introvert when it comes to standing in front of somebody and pitching my idea and talking about the financial model and how this will work and what this will mean. And I remember just thinking, I've got to try it once, just go and speak to somebody. And so I did. And I was in a bar and a woman started asking me about what do I do? And I was like, let me just try it. And I started speaking to her. And then I realized it wasn't that bad. And I kind of built my confidence then to refine what I was pitching as my idea for my first business and to think about how I can do this. And I think then there's the difficulties you have in believing in yourself and having that confidence to pitch this idea at the beginning. But by no means, even as you start to succeed, or what looks like succession or success on the outside, is I actually think it gets worse. This doubting of, who am I to do this? How have these men around me got so much confidence? What does this look like, and how do I do this? And I would say I probably even still battle that sometimes today in trying to understand what's my seat at the table, and am I getting in the way, and is there space for this idea of what I want to drive? And I also think, whilst also having those issues and doubts of yourself, there's also then the very practical and logistical struggles of balancing finances when you first start something. And I think financial anxiety is something that every entrepreneur and probably every person in business, even if they're not the owner, has struggled with as they help grow companies, organizations, and causes. And I think that it's not easy in a world that you're defined by credit scores and versus what your ideas are and your merits to drive change. And this world of capitalism versus change makers being valued is an interesting journey for those that end up working in impact.
Kerry, you're such a courageous woman, such a courageous woman. And when you're saying all these things, I'm not kidding, but I can somewhere relate to, my journey. And I can, all those elements that you really touched upon, be it financial anxiety, be it doubting your inner self, and, all these elements, I had a couple of questions for you from some of the entrepreneurs or people wanting to enter into space, ask you the same questions. So, honestly, you're such a courageous woman, Kerry, and thank you for standing up. Thank you for doing what you're doing, because you have no idea your journey could motivate so many people. It did motivate me. So, thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. That's very kind of you, and it means a lot. Thank you.
And I was actually, when I was reading about you, I saw that article which had the picture from the billboard at New York, are you a fashion entrepreneur? So I was like, wow, how did Kerry do this? And there you are, Kerry. Your courage, your patience, your determination, your perseverance, everything led you to where you are today. So thank you for doing what you do. And followed by this, Kerry, tell me that, so what led the foundation of Conscious Fashion Campaign and you and SDG Media? What were the experiences, or why did you start Conscious Fashion Campaign? Because it's such an interesting concept, and I love the concept of Conscious Fashion Campaign. So take me through that.
Thank you. So I'm the president of the board of a foundation called Public, and I started with that nearly over a decade ago, actually, where I was a global advisor as it was getting set up, and now where I am today, I am president of the board and executive committee. And I talk to this because it's so important to my overall journey. So whilst I was growing my business in fashion, a very close friend of mine, Sergio, who had the idea and was building the Public Foundation around how you can use use media for good. So we were coming together behind the scenes about convenings, the power of events, how we can leverage governments, economic development, the United Nations, media, that whole part of public-private sector. And while I was driving fashion, he was driving media for good. And so I am somebody that truly believes in slow and steady for the win. I also really believe in the universe paying it forward. Just as you see it, you have to trust in the journey. You cannot fight this. And so I actually have worked with public away from my fashion side of work for many years. And now we've actually come together. That's where the Conscious Fashion campaign has led to today, where what you just saw in Times Square was where we were announcing the next phase of the Conscious Fashion campaign in collaboration with the Public Foundation and the United Nations Office for Partnerships, where we are looking to amplify the visibility of women social entrepreneurs that are transforming fashion. And we want to do that, one, from our learnings from phase one of the Conscious Fashion campaign that I'll get into in a moment, but also because I recently read a statistic from the Global Media Monitoring Project that shared only 25% of news sources are women. And I really want to change that. And I like in my work disrupting things. And so really want to be able to help women understand that they should have enhanced visibility, their voices should be amplified, and that they should be able to not just fight for this, it should be there, it should be available. And so with that, I'm not looking to just change the statistic and put any woman on the media. I don't want to see a female CEO of a fast fashion company on these billboards, and we need to be putting the right women that are driving change for a responsible future in the media, in the advertising sector. That is what we're looking to do. Now, the Conscious Fashion campaign originally set out in 2018 with a one-year pilot program and then officially launched at the United Nations General Assembly in September 2019. And phase one of the Conscious Fashion campaign was in collaboration with the United Nations Office for Partnerships. And the goal there was how we could come together to bridge the gap between the fashion sector and the Sustainable Development Goals agenda, and how through advocacy, education, and engagement, we could work with the leading fashion industry event conveners from your fashion weeks, your trade shows, and your conferences to really work with them to understand they have a responsibility. Not only should they be doing sustainable and responsible logistics as they're doing their convenings, but when they're building their education stages and their programming, they have a responsibility to really provide how companies in their fashion sector and communities can drive conscious and responsible decisions in their business, and how it's not just talking, but they have toolkits and actionable steps and workshops and masterclasses and so forth. And so that's where phase one of the Conscious Fashion campaign was focused. We now have gone on to phase two, where we're extremely focused on the media element and how we can really raise and enhance the visibility of the women changing fashion.
This is amazing, and I love the way you're engaging media in this, because even with us, the large part of our work includes media, and how media can really, I feel that stories and media can really be the change and really help people to be on that path. I think I was reading yesterday only, there was this one paper which said that we are done with issue based approach. We need to be moving towards action based approach. Because awareness is important, but awareness is not enough to drive change. We need some agencies to make change. And there was this last line that was there in the conclusion, that we are done with using menus. Now we need cookbooks, we need recipes, and we need all these things to be, to help people be the change. And I love the concept, I love the idea. Also, Kerry, because you are working in this space, so what do you think are the opportunities in this space that lies for entrepreneurs wanting to enter into this space? What are some of the problem statements that you feel are untouched upon and can serve as opportunities for anyone who want to enter into the space?
It's a great question. And I think the reality is there are existing solutions and models that are out there that can really help the problems that we're seeing. But it's actually more about funding being available, connections happening, and then infrastructure for these solutions to be implemented and for them to have support. So when I think about your question of people looking to enter the space, it's not necessarily you need to always come into the space creating a new idea. Sometimes it's like, actually, can you create a service or a business that can support the education programs and the solutions that already exist? It's not about always needing new. It's now about advancing and enhancing the solutions that exist but have been somewhat ignored. Solutions that are being run by women social entrepreneurs that cannot get access to funding, that cannot get access to incubator programs, that are not being given the visibility that it deserves. And so I think when you look to come into the space, if it overwhelms you and you're thinking, but I don't have an idea for a solution, we don't just need the solution providers, we need the solution amplifiers, the solution funders, and the solution enhancers, because that's how this is going to drive us to where we need to go. We're going to reach a point where there can't be any more new business models to consider. We really need to start collaborating and supporting those that exist and that we know can drive the change. It's getting quite saturated. And so with that, we need to see who has got what going on, how it can be used, even cross-sector. Are there solutions in food that can be applied to the fashion sector to eliminate waste, help with chemical toxin, what can we do there? What does that look like? And I think it's really important. And I think it's fantastic that so many students are looking to graduate and are going to become the part of our next gen leaders. And what does that look like? But we cannot put the burden or the concern onto this next gen of leaders of, do you have a solution? Do you have a business that's got a new model that's a solution for conscious fashion? Because that's not the only answer. Everyone's got so many skills, from finance to the sewing, from numbers that can be used in science to accounting and financing and funding, through to in the fields where we need helps too, and that hands-on crafting.
I think you touched a very important point. One of the aspects that I've always conveyed to the podcast also, that climate action is transdisciplinary. Whatever skill, whatever passion you have, you can actually incorporate it into climate action, and then the change will be revolutionary.
Exactly.
And I think that is the kind of partnership we need. Also, it's amazing to see the partnership that you said, that with solution amplifiers, funders. I think with that collaboration, solutions will be able to penetrate more into the economy, and more people would be able to use it. Yeah. Also, Kerry, having said that, so I get a few DMs where specifically students, so they come up and they say that, I have a vision, I have a cause, I know that I need to be doing this, but somehow they do not see if there's a business model attached to it. Sometimes they, at the earliest stage, they do not see that, will I be able to financially, scale it? So at that stage, what should that student or what should that person do?
I think where this comes into play is either talking to a mentor that's in the similar space to what they're doing, or someone they respect that's had the success they want to see, just to learn their journey, and also be brave enough to reach out to maybe cold leads and connections to just have a chat and see what this means. But also, whilst doing that, I think it's important to also look into available incubators, education programs, because just because you have an idea doesn't mean you have the road to implementation. Is it with a partner? Is it through an incubator? Is it through a business program? There's many ways to bring this to fruition. I feel like a lot of social entrepreneurs always feel alone when they are first coming up with their idea. And I think, and I've learned this from my own journey, the power of partnerships and collaboration not only implements things at speed and scale, but also helps for you to get constructive criticism and feedback to shape it so that it's best for everybody.
I think you touched a very important point again, that I feel that climate action unites us and collaboration is the way forward. Also, Kerry, as I already told you, that you are an indeed and courageous woman. So, from outside, because I have seen it myself, that from outside everything seems amazing. People will come and tell you that, okay, you are doing such amazing, you have got so many roles. But on the inside, Kerry, how are you handling everything? Do you sometimes feel the pressure of like doing up to the mark, because you have such an important responsibility? Do you feel accountable, and how do you handle everything from inside?
Oh, that's a big question. And thank you for asking that, because I don't think enough people ask in society, how are you? That very simple, basic question. And that's something I try to do a lot in my day, is check in with people. But how do I handle things? For me, I have always utilized things as units of time. And I separate things. I see what I can do for that thing in that moment. I dedicate time to it, and then I move on to the next thing. I'm also big on celebrating every small to do that I tick off my list and every small win, because it's actually all those small steps that build us up to achieving the larger thing. And when you see how much you've achieved in a day, and then a week, and then a month and a year, you actually realize how much you've achieved and what can happen. So I'm very big on units, balance, and also taking time out. Like, we're living in an extremely virtual world right now. For me, it's about simply taking a screen break every hour. I structure my calls as so it cannot be overwhelming. I go for walks. I'm very big on making sure I'm hydrated. I find a huge difference in that too. Like, just simply always having water next to you and taking that time out and a break. I love to walk. I'm very big. I live by the beach. I like to be by the sand and the ocean. If not the beach, I try to be by a lake or just some access for water, so that when I am in the city, I'm at my absolute best and recharged. I'm a big one for sleep. And I'm also a big one for reading. And whilst, it's great to get caught up in series and binging on Netflix and things like that, for me, I find solace in reading. And I also think that it's really important when you start to feel yourself shaking inside, because it is something that happens to all of us very often. It's to find a breath and take yourself to a place that makes you happy. And it's really important to remember, and I think this maybe comes with age also, is that unless you self-sustain, you actually cannot drive any of the change that you want to see. And right. Your ideas and the community, whether that's local, national, or globally, you can't give without actually understanding the importance of having joy and boundaries in your own life. And I'm a big one on boundaries, but I always have been. And I think people misread that at times, where they think, I'm rude, or I'm not making the time, or I have very... Someone said to me yesterday when we were doing a recap for a project, how he wishes, and it was interesting to come from a guy, that he wishes he had the ability that I do to be able to shape a conversation on a call where everyone feels they've got what they needed and what the next steps are, and to be able to move on within 15 to 20 minutes, because he feels like he has to ask, so what's next? What else should we do? And he doesn't know how to end that call. But for me, it's the smallest things like that of implementing boundaries throughout my whole life, personal and professional. I am very open to say, in my marriage and with all my family, I need a moment. I'm going to go and do something for me right now. Please do not be offended, but this is what I need to do to come back and actually give everybody my best self.
And this is amazing, like, we need to love ourselves. I feel that we need to, appreciate ourselves, and what we are doing is amazing. Because a lot of times, I think with social media, one of the things that has happened is that we often compare ourselves, we often compare our journeys to other people. So I think, like, with what you suggested, also gives us a time to just, sit back, realize what we're doing, and appreciate what we have done. Also, and Kerry, yeah.
I want to add to that, actually, what you say about social media. So I'm not a fan of social media for a personal level. I no longer use it, but I understand the power of it for projects and growth and collaboration. But one thing I would say is, and I've done this in the past myself, social media is very time consuming. And so one thing I would challenge myself to do when I was using social media on a personal level was, when I'd go to pick up my phone to scroll, I would then actually say, no, go and read a poem, or go and read an excerpt from a book. Go and read a paragraph of something. And by the time I started reading, I no longer wanted my phone or to look at social. And I think in a way that weaned me off of it.
I need to learn that art from you. But I try like so much that, okay, no. But sometimes it just gets on. And like really I had to go into a social media detox to like get that mind straight and work again.
Yeah.
And I think this was like Gary once mentioned this thing, so I keep repeating these lines to me, that every time, every moment you are thinking about someone else's life, you're wasting that moment to build your own life.
Exactly. And
So
it's
yeah.
absolutely true. And the reality is, time is the most precious thing that we have. And
Yes.
how you utilize it, whether it's in your mind or physically accomplishing or doing something, is so crucial. And to me, I think this is why I'm fine to implement boundaries, because time to me is extremely important. And that's how I can also fit so much into my life and still be able to look after my health and my family. I have a 4-year-old son. I spend a lot of time with my child, and I've had interviews before where people assume I have home help, I have a nanny. I don't have any of that. I just ensure that I create my own schedule. I don't work 9 till 5. I work the second he has gone to school, and then I stop and I spend the afternoon with him, and then I actually check in for a few hours when he's asleep in the evening too.
Such a beautiful feeling, Kerry, and like I can understand that, like with experience that has come to you. So like I really, like really envy that, because I need to learn that from you. But like what you've done is amazing. Also, Kerry,
Thank
like
you.
moving back to what we were talking about, how do you like, do you think that women entrepreneurs have the power to drive the net zero in respective countries, or globally? How can women entrepreneurs actually lead the net zero movement?
I don't think it's how can they. I think they already are. I think the reality is women social entrepreneurs across all sectors, and I'm not just talking to fashion here to answer your
Yeah.
question, because it does take all sectors to get involved here in able to drive this agenda and goal. And I think the reality is they already are. These women
Yes.
are on the ground. They know the solutions that need to happen.
Mm.
They are working with, from organizations to communities to corporations, trying to get the governments to listen, trying to get the countries to understand. And whilst it's wrong and we don't always see these women entrepreneurs in the decision making roles across policy and media and business, they're actually the ones on the ground driving the education, the innovation, and the solutions.
Aren't we amazing? Like, aren't women amazing? Like, truly amazing.
Yes. Yes, and I think the ability to be able to handle so much, and in our day to day, where we're trying to drive so much change when you work in impact, but also due to that nurturing in us, we're also worrying about the neighbor and has your sister got this, and what's happening with the children, and have you called somebody for their birthday, and is somebody feeling okay because you found out they weren't doing too well? And there's a lot of that mental load that we
Yes.
we juggle. But in the same time, I didn't get to where I am without the inspiration and support of incredible men in my life. And it's about us not living this divide of men and women,
Yes.
but also asking the men around us to understand, to redistribute the wealth, the leadership, the assets and the resources and the access that they have. And there are men doing that. There are men cheerleading and championing for
Yes.
the women with the merit and the talent to drive things forward. We're just on such still an uneven keel.
And I'm so glad you said that, Kerry. Like, I feel that both men and women have their own strengths and own qualities. And if we need to lead this moment, we need both of them to be coming together with their own sets of strengths and qualities to lead the moment. I can say this because, like, for me, my father, he is my biggest strength in a arena when fathers save for their girls' marriage. My father literally invested in my education, and when people come and ask me these questions, that why are you doing this, like why this podcast, or why don't you get married, and like will someone allow you to continue this after marriage, it's my father who is just standing right by my side. No, you need to be dreaming about your life and doing things. And I feel that
Exactly.
that is such a strong and incredible force. Also, Kerry, like before we move to our last segment, I would like you to say some words for women who are doing this, who are showing courage every single day. Because sometimes it's really hard for a women to even step out of their houses, to even do what they're doing. So, two lines that you would like to tell every woman out there.
You are seen, you are heard, You are extremely visible. And even if you don't feel it, the world needs you and wants you and is championing you. And your time will come as a collective, never mind as individuals, where we are going to see the change that we're all collectively looking to drive, even if we feel alone in these moments sometime.
I love you, Kerry, for that. Thank you for saying such amazing words.
Thank you.
Also, Kerry, now this is a small rapid fire segment, so you can answer very quickly. So, okay, let's start. A step that you took that you're extremely proud of.
Going back to work after having my son.
Yay! Okay, so how would you like the world to know you? How would you like the world to know Kerry Bannigan?
Building bridges and creating partnerships globally for change.
Are you proud of being a unique contribution to the planet, Kerry?
Yes.
Kerry, say it completely. Yes, I'm proud of myself.
Yes, I'm very proud of myself.
Yay! So, what are you grateful for, Kerry, today?
Sunshine.
Wow. Thank you, Kerry. Thank you for doing this. And I'm extremely happy to have you, to have had you on the podcast. It was a pleasure for me to be listening all these things from you.
Thank you so much. And thanks for everything that you're doing. And I hope everyone can check out the work that we're doing at theconsciousfashioncampaign.com.
Definitely, I'll put all the links in the description and people can connect with you. What are the platforms you're active on, Kerry?
You can check out our Instagram at Fashion Impact Fund and also across Twitter and LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kerry. Thank you for being on the show.